Welcome to KLEAN Radio, the show about addiction and how to overcome it, featuring celebrity and professional interviews with people in recovery and how successful treatment has brought remarkable changes in their lives. With your hosts, Andrew.
I got married for the third time, and the over-under between all my friends was 15 months.
And Judah.
Well, it sounds profound if it doesn't make sense.
I guess so.
That's what I've learned about profoundness.
Break free of those habits that are controlling you. Life is waiting. Come and get it. KLEAN Radio starts now.
Hey Judah, how are you doing this week?
I'm good.
Welcome, KLEAN Radio listeners. We are a show about addiction and recovery, and we have an exciting show tonight. We have a great guest, Anna David, who will be joining us shortly in the studio.
That's lovely and talented, Anna David.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know about her, I can't imagine that anybody doesn't. She runs The Fix, and she's an author.
Yeah.
Very accomplished, and we'll be getting into that shortly. How's your week been?
That's how we're going to start. My week's been good. I was in New York. I just got back today. I got back off the plane.
The snowstorm?
Yes, I hit the October snowstorm, and it's very shocking when you walk outside and you're expecting it to be like 60 degrees, and you walk outside to smoke a cigarette, and you look at snow on the ground.
Especially when you're sober.
Yes, and when you're sober, exactly. You know what's funny about, we were talking about flying business class before, so I was flying business class, and it's very odd that I can't, I'm sober a while, and free booze, and I can't drink it. Right. And very surreal. I almost feel like I'm wasting my business class.
Right, that's really the big benefit.
That is the big benefit.
Food isn't any better.
No, it's not. But there is food. That's actually the big difference, is that there is food. And so it was a fun week. And
you engage in your eating addiction.
Yes, another one of my. No, but it was really a lot of fun. There was a lot of stuff in the news, and it's a good week.
There was a lot of
stuff. And I missed you last week,
week,
actually.
Yes, I was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been traveling the globe.
Yeah. So I've never been there. You actually got to take me.
Yeah, it was
gumbo.
Very humid.
But you were missed, and we had some really good callers last week. I hope Tony's listening tonight. Tony was addicted, couldn't stop smoking crack, and he called like a real big cry for help, and I hope he actually got help. Oh. And one of my favorite things that he was talking about was, he was, and you face this a lot, was anybody that's sober is you constantly hear people say, well, it didn't work for me, and then you start asking questions about like how many meetings do you actually go to? Have you ever worked a program? And usually the answer is no. Some sort. It's that they're not taking care of themselves.
Right.
And it was pretty interesting. And then we had another caller talking about Al-Anon. I think Al-Anon is such an important program. I was actually talking to somebody about this tonight, about how it's, she's talking about how her husband is, her and her husband are going through a rough time. And I was saying he's got to do his part too, which is, if the family member's going to Al-Anon. And I can't encourage that more.
Yeah, it's definitely important to get family members involved.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a family illness, and people keep forgetting that for some reason.
Wow. Look at Michael Lohan. Talk about a family illness.
Right? There's a piece of work.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's all you really could say is like, there's a piece of work.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many conversations where we've tried to find redeeming qualities in his efforts, but it just seems like he keeps making the same mistake. And
he's a drug addict, probably, I'm guessing.
He's got anger and rage issues, too, which seem to be even more pressing than his...
And the saddest part is that we're actually talking about it.
I know, right?
Like I was reading this thing yesterday about like
somehow we're giving this
people
credit,
that are
right? Not
people
success.
that are famous for you don't even know why, but you don't know why they're even famous. You just see their picture all of a sudden one day, and they're it's like our guest tonight has gone to school, and she has a reason to talk. A few years ago, I was talking to somebody, and I had written a column for something, and he read it. He goes, "This is a great article." He goes, "But who are you to write this?" And his whole point was like, why would people listen to your point of view?
There's something odd though. People are attracted, and I'm attracted as well. I think to like the train wreck. You always want to see the dark side of everything. There's a bit of all of us that always want to explore that avenue of human nature and what we can get ourselves into. Those things that we're too scared to cross the line ourselves and go over and see.
Which is why Halloween is such a big holiday.
Right? You get to wear a different mask.
You get to wear a different costume, and we were looking at pictures, and it's you see 30, 40-year-old people dressed in certain ways. And I know I sound like an old man now, but you're like thinking to yourself, what are you doing?
Right. Well, it's funny to see what they project themselves as. Right?
Yeah, and I was showing you that
Especially
picture
in Hollywood. They're always who they really want to be in Hollywood. You know what I mean?
It's like the Billy Joel song, Stranger.
Right.
And yes, I mean, I just thought it was very interesting. And Darrell Hammond also is on CNN talking about that he cut himself, and that he's a cutter. And it's something actually we haven't talked about on the show, is cutting, which is huge out there for everybody listening. It's obviously it is what it sounds like. So
it's another part of the picture where people are trying to control their emotions and feel something when often they can't feel something because they've had so much trauma and pain in their lives. So,
what is the rate of cutting with men?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's quite as high. But
there's a computer right next to you.
Men tend to be more violent. So, instead of doing sort of that intermediary, sort of self-destructive type of behavior, they tend to go more towards suicidal behavior and then do things that are more lethal, like shoot themselves or jump off a bridge.
Would gambling be considered a form of cutting?
No.
No, because you're doing it. No,
unless you're gambling about whether you're going to cut yourself.
The reason I'm asking you is because it's the same thing in a sense. You're like cut. You're.
Well, it's that same idea of that you're engaging in a self-destructive, repetitive action. But cutting is very particular to really someone who's somewhat anhedonic. In other words, they don't have any real sense of feeling. They're very depressed and flat, and they just want to feel alive and know that they're real. And so that cutting gives them a sense that they still exist. It gives them a sense of being and presence that they don't get from their regular lives and where they are in their lives and biochemically in their depression. So it's a very complex issue when people get into cutting, and it can also have a lot to do with identity disorders and body dysmorphic disorders where people don't really have a good sense of themselves, and so they hate their bodies, and so they'll tend to self-mutilate.
So the biggest question, I think, is what do people do? I mean, everybody knows somebody that's going through these things. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the easy stock answer is to reach out for help. There's so many great professionals that can help with these type of issues. But the other thing is that most importantly, what I tell people is don't ignore things. It's so easy to be scared of things and ignore them and try and pretend like they're not as big a deal as they are. And I think if you instinctually notice something or you recognize it, actually take the time to recognize that you actually have seen something or that you recognize that something's going on and that you need to reach out for help. It's easy to get into that place of denial or minimalization where you somehow don't think it's as big a deal as it really is. And I think addicts do that for themselves as they progress in their disease, but also family members and people around, friends and family, tend to do the same thing too, through enabling, but also just through denial. Denial is a very common way of people coping with pain, be it their own pain or the pain they see around them.
So if you're driving around tonight, if you're listening to us, you're listening to KLEAN Radio, by the way. We're in the studio tonight with Judah and Andrew, and you can find us on Facebook at KLEAN Radio, and you could live stream us. There are people that are driving around that are going through these issues, and I think it's really important whether you call us and you ask us for our opinions or anything like that. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. That is 888-539-2980. Give us a call with any question you might have. We're here to talk about life after you get sober. And that's something you and I have always found to be an extremely important topic that's not spoken of enough, is that life gets amazing after you get sober.
Absolutely. That's, the heart of the show is that there is hope and that great ththings happen once you get sober.
And I think that's what, family members that are listening, or if you're an addict that's listening tonight, is that there is hope. And, most of the people we know are living amazing lives, and that's one of the reasons we have our guests that we have in tonight.
So why don't we introduce our guests?
You have too big of a bio, by the way, Anna.
Can I talk now?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to move a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, you can skip most of it.
Okay.
So those who are listening,
I see asexuality.
Anna
We'll touch on that
David.
in a second.
I don't know which bio you have. It sounds like an extended version.
Yes.
Well,
We have in the studio tonight. Yes, we have Anna David. You could tell us about yourself since I won't read. No, you're basically the head of the Fix.
Well, I'm the executive editor. My boss would not like to hear that. But yeah, no. I oversee all the content. So, and we did a lovely article on you guys. Which
You
I
did.
hope
Thank
we're
you
happy
kindly.
with.
It was great.
Yes.
It was great. We love that we were on top.
above Dr. Drew, the comment on Dr. Drew. Although I had just been on Dr. Drew that day, so I was feeling kind of weird about it.
Oh, yeah, you were above Dr. Drew.
I was.
He's,
Yes.
a friend of mine, so that means a lot.
Yeah,
I'll
I know,
do
right?
anything for him.
Yes.
But the story was really about you guys.
Yeah, it was great.
Nice. It was
Thank
a
you
real
very
compliment.
much.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And what is The Fix?
The Fix is a website dedicated to addiction and recovery, doing very much what you guys are doing here. And we launched in February. The founder is Mayor Rashawn, who's this bigwig in publishing. He founded Radar Magazine before it became that cheesy gossip website.
Right.
And he used to run Interview Magazine and used to run New York Magazine. And
wow.
he was always the guy I always wanted to work for. So he got sober and decided this was not only something he was passionate about, but something that he thought would make a lot of money. You know, it was one of those, hey, this is a good business idea. You know, people are actually talking about this now.
Right.
And so we focus, most of our readers are either addicts or in love with addicts or have some relationship with addiction. But, but we do celebrity interviews and that kind of thing so that, the so-called normies also read us. Right. But, we are news, we are essays, we are interviews, everything to do with drinking, drugs, addiction, recovery.
You guys had a big launch. I mean, there was the Wall Street Journal article, I think was where I first read about it.
We've been in the Times like 3 times, the Washington Post, Salon, everywhere, basically.
Uh-huh. And why do you think that is? What's special about the fix that made it such a...
quite frankly, it's Mayor. Right. Mayor Rashawn is a huge celebrated media guy.
Right.
And anything he does is always big news. Right. So I knew that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to work for him. But I think also the time is right. But I'm not going to lie. It's a lot to do with him.
Right.
But that goes to the New York Times story this year about the A in anonymity.
Yeah.
And...
which we've talked about, was in the fix as well.
Right.
There's a great article on it.
Sort of think we started that. I mean, Susan Cheever wrote this piece. She's one of our columnists, and she wrote this piece about it. And then the Times wrote about it and wrote about our piece, and then we wrote about it again. And, and there's a guy I'm friends with, I think, because he started, like a guy I consider a good friend who started just sort of hating on the fix on Twitter. First, he begged us for a job. Then he started...
How typical is this story?
Welcome to the world of recovery.
Yeah, right.
Hating and saying things like, I wish there was a way to hate the fix more than just not reading it. And I see him at a friend's birthday dinner that night. I'm like, what do you do? You do realize I do every single piece on that. And he's like, oh, well. And it was he had this very, very half-baked argument about the fact that we talked about Alcoholics Anonymous, was ruining the very foundation that had saved our lives.
Yeah.
Which is such I was actually talking about this with a woman last week in sobriety, and we were talking about this, and I said, in the old days, they used to give out their last names.
Right.
Everybody knew his name was Bill Wilson because he said, my name is Bill Wilson, and that way you could actually look him up in the phone book and call him. And I don't know where this came about, this whole idea of
I think it's a combination of, alcoholics, like if we are not working our steps, if we are in our defects, we are convinced we have the answers to everything. So people will get a little bit of information, like this guy who is considered a great AA, and start thinking that the anonymity, that actually talking about Alcoholics Anonymous or allowing writers to write I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous is somehow breaking that tradition, and it's not.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of conflict over the meaning of, I think, that tradition. Anonymity. And I could see there used to be so much larger of a stigma with alcoholism when people didn't really understand it was a disease.
Well, and also, you more than me are in a profession where it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
We are not. It is a benefit to both of our jobs, actually, that we are. So I'm not a lawyer at a very conservative firm. I understand that I have freedom that a lot of the world does not.
And can I be? And let's just like talk honestly about that. It's so funny, really, like lawyers. I'd rather my lawyer be sober. It's like if you got on a plane and the pilot said I've been sober for 15 years, I'd be like, hell yeah, this is going to be a safe flight. And it's like, and I always say that, it's like people are like, why, aren't you nervous about breaking your anonymity? I'm like, I used to pee walking around on the street.
Right.
I'm okay with telling people
There's
now
a lot of anonymity
sober.
I've broken.
Right.
There was a lot more humiliating.
I've broken so much anonymity in my drinking of being this bad alcoholic. You're listening to KLEAN Radio tonight. We're in the studio with Anna David. You could see her a lot of times on Fox News Channel, one of my favorite channels.
We should clarify that it is not one of my favorite channels. I am just a good friend of the host of one of those shows.
Greg Gutfeld.
Yes.
Because you're on Red Eye, I assume.
Yes.
I assume it's
Greg
it's Greg
Gutfeld, who I've known forever, and we were actually on television. His very first time, he was on television with me. But yeah, no, I'm liberal, and Greg always
Nobody's
makes
perfect.
fun of me for it.
A liberal, you're Jewish?
Yeah.
A liberal Jew. Go figure. No, I'm joking. You're great on that show, and I saw you the first time when you were promoting your first book, Party Girl. And I think one of the biggest reasons, I think what you're facing with the hate that is going to come about with the fix and with all these things is because people are jealous that they didn't think of the idea first.
I know. I think that is really what's fueling that guy.
Yeah.
You know, it was like he was going off about, like, we have Nick Sheff writing for us, and he was going off about, like, Nick Sheff did this, and you did this, and Mayor Rashawn did. And I was like, well, the difference is, like, we're all working.
Right.
You don't.
Right. I'm convinced it's like the same time. We've had this.
The other thing is there's a lot of fake sort of news blogs that are really marketing mechanisms for rehabs.
Right.
So you've got a lot of, like, I don't know, I don't want to name any on the air, but like treatment for whatever, something.com.
Right.
That has, sort of RSS fed news articles on anything related to addiction to try and get traffic to get people to come to their rehab.
Right.
And you guys are actually really a news element, right?
Yeah, and it was
and
new.
you don't really have a revenue model that's based on treatment, providing treatment, really, right? So,
well, it's that. I mean, now that we just got more funding, we just got $2.4 million, which is great, and it is a credit to Mayor.
Which lasts a quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
3 months.
But now, actually, we have a system where if people go to a rehab based on one of our reviews, we actually do get a percentage.
And that's great that you're openly saying that out loud.
I know. I'm like,
right?
No. You know what? I don't see what's wrong with that either.
Why should Google get it? Google
and not just that. What's wrong with making a living? And I always say that to people, and I really do. It's like you wrote this amazing book. Anybody that's listening out there, get this book called Party Girl. We'll talk about your new book.
Okay, yeah, that's old news.
But it is old news. But I think
I
think getting back to it, I think the whole thing is you actually wrote something.
Yes.
And because so many people that are in the meetings or in the rooms or dream about writing something, and then the person writes about it, and then it builds up a resentment, I believe.
Yeah, I wonder. Nobody ever actively said to me anything negative about Party Girl, because that's too, people can get away with sort of criticizing the fix because that's not, me.
Right, it's not your direct.
But, Party Girl was a novel. People often forget that.
Not a memoir.
No, it was, but it was a novel based totally on my life. Everyone's first novel is completely autobiographical, and I honestly didn't think I would write any more books. I thought I had one story to tell, and I told it, and I, changed some things for plot, and I had to have an ending and all of these things. But almost everything that happens is based on, my addiction and my recovery and all of that.
Right. But you've just written something new.
Yeah, this is my fourth book, and this is a memoir. And I don't know if you saw me on Red Eye promoting it.
No, I haven't.
Greg kept calling it my 16th memoir, and I'm like, no, it's my first.
I like to sleep at night sometimes now. Like the older I can't stay up for
There
Red
is a
Eye
thing
anymore.
called TiVo.
Yeah,
You got to
is.
tell your
DVR,
co-host about that. Yeah.
Well, I got to pay him more first.
He's got to.
Yeah.
Right, I'm still on the old box. No, I can't pause yet.
Well, so this new one, this is a memoir, and this is actually my favorite thing I've ever written, which is saying a lot because I'm, an alcoholic full of self-hatred, so I hate most of the things I do. That's only half a joke. You could laugh. But, so, this is actually really about getting to 10 years of sobriety and really hitting a wall and saying, okay, I'm sober. It's nice that I don't stay up all night doing cocaine and, want to get up to pee, but I'm shaking too hard to actually do it. It's wonderful that I can, work and be successful and all these things, but I'm hitting a wall. It's not enough. I don't remember how bad it was well enough anymore. And, I really reached a bottom in sobriety. And then what I did about that is unusual, admittedly. I took a book from 1962 called Sex and the Single Girl and decided to follow everything in this book. And amazingly, doing this actually got me to a place of acceptance where basically I was just like buying into the societal notion that there was something terribly wrong with me, that I was not married with children at my age. And I had really turned on myself about it and really been just so internally beating myself up for so many years. I didn't even realize I was doing it.
It's really interesting because, you're liberal. You just told us you're liberal,
yes.
right? And you're female, obviously.
That's true.
Right? And you've been very successful.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you've had books, and you're a well-known editor now, and you're doing all these things. And you wrote that stuff for Details magazine on prostitution, right? And then you write...
Yeah, I did.
Right? So you've done a lot of work about sexuality.
Yeah.
And you had a sex blog, I believe, right? Or a sex radio show?
Oh, yeah, I did a serious show that was...
Right, so you've worked a lot with female sexuality, which has to do a lot with feminism, right?
Yes,
and,
in a way.
And mastery over the aggressor. It has a lot to do with prostitution, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did one story about prostitution, and it was this massive investigative story, and then I fictionalized that and made that into my second novel. But I wanted to be more fascinated by prostitution than I was, because I love the seedy...
You do one prostitution story. Yeah.
No, but seriously, I love anything dark.
But prostitution has a lot of trauma, right? I mean, most prostitutes
What were you
have trauma.
expecting when you first...
And wait, hold on a second. And most prostitutes have gone into that to sort of try and overcome sexual trauma that they've had in their past.
Well, and it's rife with addiction.
Absolutely, because they have to do that to cover up the pain.
Yeah, I think very few women are like, oh, well, this would be a good way to make a living. I come from this happy, healthy, normal childhood, but this just seems like a smart financial decision. That does not really happen.
Well, that's the myth.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of your earlier work, I guess, then was really about sort of identity development.
Oh, God, this is a deeper analysis than I was prepared for.
I wasn't expecting quite a deconstruction myself. But,
yeah.
Right? Wow. But it was really, your early work is really about identity development and about really forming identity. And now your new work is about, now that I have an identity, how do I live with it? And do I feel a sense of real self?
That's interesting. I mean, because the plot of my two novels was the same. I realized after I did it that they were both about a girl who is grappling with how she's perceived versus who she is. You know, the plot of Party Girl is she basically is this crazy party girl, gets sober, and gets a job writing a column called Party Girl. Right. So she creates this persona based on who she used to be. I got sober and I worked at, remember, Premiere Magazine, and I did a column called Party Girl. So that's why I did it. But I realized that is my issue, is like, how am I seen versus who am I? Because I had lots of ideas before I got sober about who I was. I was super cool. I was super bitchy. And it's like, I got sober. I'm like, I'm not that cool at all. And I'm actually really like a total softie.
Right. Well, that's the literal part, right? And also, I think, like we were talking about earlier, like the rubbernecking or sort of like looking at tragedy in other people's lives to try and understand the pain in your own life,
right?
Is a big part of journalism and investigation.
That's interesting.
And then you reflect a lot in the memoir now, I guess, is now how do you come back to being sort of whole and sane and being okay with kind of being normal?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I've always been very honest about my own trauma and my own pain. Not because I'm brave, just because I didn't actually realize there was a choice. Like, one of my friends who read Falling for Me before, I turned it into the editor, said to me, like, you realize you don't have to be this honest, right? Like that, you can get away with not being this honest. And I'm a Jew. Like, I don't know. I was raised like, my mom is just like, we go there.
Right.
I was raised the opposite. I was raised when we don't go there. By the way, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's Clean with a K. You can find us on Facebook at KLEAN Radio, or you could live stream us at cleanradio.com. The number here to call in is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with the amazingly talented Andrew Spanswick and the the amazingly talented Anna David. And something you were talking about just now that is something extremely important, because whenever you go to 12-step meetings, you constantly hear this theme: we're here for the newcomer. And the problem is sometimes people with time are going through pain too. And it's very scary to say out loud, I have 8 years sober and my life's a mess. It's one of the most fearful things, and I love that you're talking about that being 10 years sober and hitting that wall, because it's life. You hit walls, but it's not talked about as enough. It's like something like the guy with 10 years going, man, my life is really rough today, and it's like you're scared that somebody's going to be newly sober and say, what's the point? Right. And it takes a lot of courage to say, I have 10
and also,
years
like
sober.
we're talking about phases of life, right?
Right.
So identity formation has one set of struggles, and you had a poor set of coping skills for that, right? Which, ironically, you also got some very positive ways of using those poor coping skills
later
to get
my
secondary
benefit.
gain to your benefit,
right?
But then you're like, oh wow, I got secondary gain out of actually doing something wrong, Now, how do I do something right without getting secondary gain off something wrong and be sort of excited about it?
Well, the truth is, as I see it now, is I got sober and, I'd go to meetings and people would say, my disease was doing push-ups in the night. And I'd go, what is wrong with these depressing people? Like, I got sober and things got great. I was fired from every job I ever had. Suddenly I get sober. I get stuff way beyond what I wanted. I have friends around me, and my life gets really good. What I was also doing is I was using everything alcoholically. My career, completely alcoholic. Right. Still, honestly.
And obsessively.
Obsessively. Yeah. My serotonin would get raised by, like, interactions with men and career validation. And, like, that only works for so long. And it's like, it just stopped working. And suddenly I'm like, oh, Christ, I have to get as sober as those people who used to talk about the disease doing push-ups. And I learned what that meant. I learned, this is a really serious thing. And the longer I'm sober, the more serious I discover it is. The more I have to do.
Well, the more life happens. And that's like one of the things we talk about in the show is, when you're drinking, life is so small.
Right.
You really
the
don't
work is just staying loaded.
Right. The work is just literally, it's Groundhog Day to get, it's just that same thing.
Feeling well enough just to be able to use again.
Right. And I always say to people, don't scare a drug addict with death. Scare him with life.
Right.
That'll scare them more than anything. When
right.
I was a kid,
that drawer full of bills in the closet.
Right. I was always terrified as a kid of, like, when people would say, oh, you have so much potential. I just wanted them to say you're a loser. Don't even try.
Right.
Just put him away in a psych ward, give him 3 meals a day, and I would have been happy, because the idea of having to fulfill my potential terrified me.
Right.
There was something in me that was paralyzed by this fear. And when I drank, no longer, like I said, were they saying, where's he going to go to college? It was, where's he going to go to rehab?
Right.
I had lowered the expectations. And I think when you get sober, the expectations start to get bigger.
And your expectations for yourself start to get bigger.
Right.
And as time goes on, you're like, I have 5 years sober, I have 6 years sober, I should have this. And, the alcoholic brain is very, I should be, they should be, that's my experience.
And you get it, and that's what also we were talking about Al-Anon, what's so important for family members to go, is because that's a lot of times the constant thing you hear, especially when you're younger. I mean, you got sober obviously very young.
I just have good genes. I'm 106.
You're 106. You're like the La Yogurt commercials from the old days. You've been taking a lot of La Yogurt. But I think when you get sober young, that's one of the harder things, is because obviously your family is more integrated sometimes into your life. And it's like, okay, you're 22, you're sober. What's next? Where are you going to go?
Right.
And then you hear the dual message in the 12 steps. It's like, you're a miracle because you didn't take a drink or a drug today.
Right.
So you're like going from this 12-step meeting where, like, you're a success because you didn't take it, to going home.
Right.
Where it's like, are you going to get a job today?
Well, and especially if you've got upwardly mobile Jewish parents, it's like, never, my dad was just very much like, you got an A, I don't understand who got the A+. That's what I was raised on,
Right. Yeah. What did your parents do?
My dad was a very successful entrepreneur for a while. He had these 2 stores. He was like the Crazy Eddie of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He started the very first discount TV and stereo store.
Right. Was he in Boogie Nights? Like
he should have been. He should have been. Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Remember that character?
He totally, because that was so my life was going to my dad's store in like the 70s. So it's kind of like that.
Stereos were big back then.
Yeah, no, it was good. And my mom's an English professor.
That's fine. Yeah, my dad's a biophysicist at Cornell. My mom's a retired English teacher.
So much.
My father owned the pizza. No, just joking.
We got to go out on a break, but you want to give the number out one more time?
Yes, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with Anna David, and we'll be back. You're listening to KFWB News Talk 980.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Now, back to Andrew and Judah.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio, everybody. I'm here. My name is Andrew Spanswick. I'm with Judah, and we have Anna David from The Fix, a great author as well.
It's a great name, by the way. I never realized that it's The Fix. Fix.
Oh, you're quick.
Yes,
wow,
I
right?
am.
What a
slow.
genius.
As you can see, I do a lot of show prep.
And clean might refer to.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, but it's with the K.
But
I'm
it's
right.
because we're
confused.
fresh.
Right,
I got off a plane today.
I'm
I'm a little tired.
He's still 30,000 feet in the air.
Yeah, it was a hard.
We did a story on here. There's
Yes.
no excuse.
I know. The Fix is great, though. I enjoy reading it. It's if anybody's out there and they're looking for any questions about alcoholism and drug addiction, go to thefix.com. Well, obviously, you could go to cleantreatmentcenter.com too, but cross-promote. But the Fix is great because it basically, it's like what we're trying to do here in print version is show people that there is an amazing life after you get sober. And that's something you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because had I known how difficult it was, like if you'd sat me down, you'd be like, this is what's going to happen to you, I would have been like, I don't know if I could do that.
Right.
But it's been the most beautiful, amazing experience. I mean, I was not among the living. I was walking among the living, but I was not. I was totally dead inside. And living, involves pain, but it also involves the kind of joy that I had never imagined.
Did you know you wanted to write?
Oh, yeah. That's all I've ever done.
That's all you've ever wanted to do?
Yeah.
And do you think you drank or used because you felt intimidated by that, or?
No, I think it's totally unrelated. I mean, I think a lot of creative people are addicts, but no. I mean, I was frustrated by the fact that I kept getting fired from every job I attempted to have, but no, I just believe, I believe you're born with a predisposition, and your circumstances either exacerbate or minimize that precondition, and my circumstances exacerbated. And that, people love to say, when Party Girl came out, everyone's like, oh, well, Hollywood made you an addict, right? And it's like, no, if I had been in Des Moines, I would have found that weird ranch hand who dealt coke on the side.
I can tell you the bar actually in Des Moines. I did a deal in Des Moines.
No, but you're right. It's amazingly true. You're right.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you, some of my favorite stories, in certain 12-step stuff is like, the guy went to a farm in the middle of nowhere to tie himself up so he wouldn't.
Right.
And eventually
right.
you just find it. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to cocaine because it sort of took me there fast, and I think without it, I would have just been a sort of practicing alcoholic until I killed somebody in a car.
It's really funny because I say the reverse. I say, thank God I didn't find cocaine, because then I would have been a drunk. That
you could never drive. That was the good thing.
That's definitely true too. But because I just drank,
nobody would trust you with a car. So
thank God.
Right.
But my father actually used to say that to me. He used to go, "I'm not going to give you a weapon."
Right.
And I was like, "That's a little heavy."
He had some insight.
Accurate.
I mean, I was always, with the cocaine, I always was very grateful when I got sober that I never got involved with it, because I knew that had I done it, it would have taken me years more to get here.
Or, the e-ticket faster. Right.
Well, I mean, I got here when I was 22. I don't know how much quicker I could have gotten
Yeah,
here.
that's pretty young.
I mean, that would have been like, well, I was trying from 18 to 22. So
cocaine's a different drug, and certainly with alcohol, it creates another different drug altogether. So, different people have different bottoms on different things, and people can use opiates for years and be sustained drug addicts.
Yeah.
For much longer.
But I mean, and I know of people who can do cocaine for years, and I don't understand. I mean, I wanted to kill myself for the last 2 years of using. I mean, to be able to do cocaine and not want to take your own life, that is a freaking miracle.
Yeah, because doing cocaine, you got to be a little suicidal to do it in the first place. I mean, after you get to a certain point, I mean, it's like, sitting there, I think I might have a stroke, It's like...
No, I mean, this is probably just proving my ignorance, but do that many people die from snorting cocaine?
A lot of people have strokes. A lot of people they end up paralyzed.
Scar tissue.
There's vascular dementia. They have aneurysms, heart attacks, cardiac arrest, very common.
I'd be curious about the statistics.
Yeah, cocaine
it's a hard thing to
it's
figure.
A good article for The Fix.
But it's also,
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's a hard thing to figure the statistics on, because it's all death related to it.
Well, the other thing is that polysubstance abuse is so mixed in. So a lot of the alcohol stats are going to be mixed with the coke using stats. I mean, very few people that are doing coke are not drinking as well.
Right.
So you get in a car accident, kill yourself and kill somebody, they're going to probably put it up as, drug or alcohol related. They're not going to say cocaine in particular, but it might have been coke that got someone
right
to that level of addiction that they were that out of control.
Right.
But I used to own and work in a lot of hospitals, so we would see people all the time, mostly in psychiatric wards, where they'd had strokes and lost the use of one arm. It's mostly from the use of cocaine from crack. Or shooting it.
Right.
It's not so much snorting it. But if you're at the point where you're smoking it or shooting it, you're definitely high risk of having seizures. You fall down, knock yourself in the head, that's it.
Well, the other thing, too, about hard drugs is if you're doing that, possibly look at the fact that you have an issue. I don't think there is casual hard drug use.
There isn't. You can try and pretend there is, which I think a lot of people do.
There's no such thing as a social crackhead.
I guess in England, I was in England a little while ago, I guess 2 or 3 years ago. It's a while ago now. But, all the bankers were out on the weekend and they'd do coke Friday, Saturday night, maybe Sunday night, and then stop through the week. And they thought that was social. But then, 4 or 5 years down the line, they're all crashing out left and right. So, it's not sustainable.
But it's
there's a period, I think, where you probably can recreationally do these drugs for a minimal amount of time.
Right.
But most people that are going to engage in that weekend after weekend are going to slip progressively. Their tolerance will build. They'll have to do something more to get that hit.
Right.
And then they end up, going over the edge.
But it's more than, it's like when I see people that do that, I hear people, and this isn't from I'm sober and I'm judging you. It's more like I'm like, oh, that sounds horrible. When you hear about these, when you see people.
Yeah, but how many people really are functional addicts? And that's what's weird. We're talking about hitting bottom and then getting sober because that's the situation. Right. But there's so many people that are out there functioning as addicts. I was driving down Santa Monica Boulevard not very long ago. I saw some guy smoking a crack pipe as he was driving to work at 9 a.m, and I'm thinking, wow, And I remember being in New Orleans and just this past week, and this guy opened his briefcase and bought a pint of vodka and a roll of certs and stuck it in his briefcase on the way to work. I was just like, this stuff's happening every day. People are living in this.
30% of America.
Yeah.
That's the American Medical Association, statistics.
Right, abuse of drugs and alcohol.
And
really?
Yeah, it's 30%.
Yeah.
Because a lot of studies say 10 to 16%.
Well, that's abuse, not addiction.
Right.
So it's abuse and addiction.
Right.
So.
But again, going to your thing, if you're using cocaine, if you're using ecstasy, I don't care whether you're addicted to or not, it's dangerous.
Well, the thing is, if you are not, let's say you don't believe in the disease concept, you are not an alcoholic or addict, you do an addictive substance enough, you will become addicted because it is an addictive substance. Take smoking.
That's a great thing you're talking about too. One of the biggest reasons I love being affiliated with KLEAN is because I do believe it's one of the few rehabs that deals with dual diagnosis and addiction, and basically has no problem with saying, we might think you have a mental, a psychological impairment,
mental health disorder,
right? But once you become a pickle, you can't become a cucumber again,
right?
So that in that.
Well, the funny thing with mental illness is the number one problem we have treating people with mental illness is medication compliance. People that have psychiatric issues take medication, they think they're better, and they stop taking their medication.
So weird,
right? And then they end
such a problem.
And so they end up often using drugs and alcohol again, as in a self-medicating loop, and then they end up on medication again, and then they stop taking their meds, and then they start self-medicating again. So that's a common thing. And when I used to just only run psychiatric hospitals, I would see that all the time. Almost the same people coming in and out on that cycle. The substance abuse world that I work in now is now, mental illness is viewed sort of as not really, it's secondary, and substance abuse is now primary. Well, it used to be the other way around when I owned psych hospitals. Psych was first and substance abuse was, it's a problem. And so what we've been trying to do at KLEAN is integrate those two and show that you really have to look at the whole picture. You can't say somebody is just an alcoholic and therefore they have mental illness, or they have mental illness and that's why they're an alcoholic. No, you have mental illness and you also are an alcoholic. We can't figure out the mental illness part till we get you sober.
Right.
And baseline you and figure out what's really going on. Right. And that's where professional treatment really comes in. So there's some people that can go to AA, and for the people that can and go to AA and get sober on their own and safely, and I'd stress safely because, detoxing off of something as simple as something like Valium.
Or alcohol.
Right, which is a benzodiazepine, and people think that, or even alcohol, right? And they think that, I can detox myself and just go to AA and it's fine. That's not true. You should really at least go see your doctor, because people have seizures and die.
Well, I was taking a lot of Ambien when I got sober, and I didn't even think that this was a problem, because I wasn't. It was totally pre Ambien studies about how you eat and stuff when you're taking Ambien, and I I just took it because I needed to sleep, and I was taking about 10 times what I'd been prescribed.
It also actually slightly detox you off alcohol. Because
it does?
benzodiazepine, so it makes it easier. It takes the jitters off of alcoholics' DT.
It also, took the jitters off of cocaine high.
Yeah.
And that's why I used it. And
I was about to say, I didn't even know Ambien was around when you got
I know,
sober.
in the old days. Yeah. No, I was an
I
early
can say that because I'm sober. I think
advocate.
similar time, but I didn't know.
Oh yeah, I was doing it, and the thing about the Ambien is I would take like 4 or 5 of these pills a night. The pills I was supposed to be cutting up into quarters,
Right.
and I remember like driving one day on Venice Boulevard and like hitting a car, and like we pulled over, and like I didn't know where I was driving or why. I mean, it was crazy. But when I went to Promises, and they got so angry at me for just stopping cold turkey. You could have had a seizure, and I'm like, Ambien? Like, I just take that to sleep.
Well, that's because the
We've
way,
seen it. I mean,
but that's also just because the way they project the drug. You turn on the TV, on the commercials.
Well,
it's
the
like
name, Ambien,
right? It's like
amiable.
they make it
fun,
sound
free,
so simple.
I mean, to me, it sounds terrifying.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio, by the way. You can find this on Facebook at KLEAN Radio, and the number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. We're in the studio tonight with the very talented author, Anna David, also one of the co-founders of The Fix.
No, I'm a hired hand.
Editor-in-chief.
I am the executive editor.
Executive editor.
She's the first executive editor.
Yeah.
The main executive.
I'm just happy I got her name. No, I'm joking. And if anybody out there, please go to thefix.com. It's an amazing website about addiction and
where do
all
we get
that
your
stuff.
book?
Yeah, you can also, while
Yes.
you're online,
Yes.
go to Amazon. No, you can go to AnnaDavid.com to find out about my new book, which came out October 11th from HarperCollins.
It's really exciting.
Falling for Me. And, shockingly, a lot of men are liking it. I thought it was just for women.
Because there's your pictures in there. No.
No. that's why.
And are you going to be signing this book anywhere?
Yeah, I've done a couple signings in New York and LA.
I saw the pictures. They were great.
Thank you. We are talking about San Francisco, and I'm going back to New York to do some more promotion stuff, and I'll probably do a reading and signing there.
What about here?
Yeah, well, there's talk of one.
Yeah.
I did this big book soup one, was amazing. We sold out books in the first 20 minutes. Bunch of crazy people came that asked me crazy questions. Yeah.
What's the craziest question you've been asked?
Well, this was a crowd of about 100,
Right.
and a man started crying because of how much my book moved him, and that's wonderful.
Right.
And then he said, the word suicide is mentioned over and over again in Party Girl. And this has happened to me before. I argue with people about what's in one of my books, and I'm wrong.
Right. And
I
you
go,
wrote it, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't think it is. He's like, oh, it is. And, and he's like, and you're so dark in the first chapter of this book. And he's crying. Oh, and he goes, do you contemplate taking your own life? And I'm like, hi.
You're like,
I'm in a pink dress. This is to promote my book.
come here.
It's called projection. He's talking about his own issues. So you just turn it around on them.
Which is pretty amazing.
I handled it.
I mean, you write these books that, obviously have an impact on people. That's an amazing.
This one definitely has.
That's amazing. Well, I think all of them. I think the articles too. I think the Fix has obviously these things are having effects on people, because I think we live in a bubble, and I'll speak for myself in L.A., New York. We live in this bubble where we think everybody knows about addiction.
The Judah bubble.
The Judah bubble, and that's my own. That's my own bubble.
And it's like, get me out. Did I just merge into that somehow?
Yeah, I think my bubble is very close to your bubble right now.
Hey now, I don't know where you're going on that. That's my book. Anna's Falling for Me. No, but we have this idea that everybody knows about addiction. And everybody knows about all this stuff, and they don't. And I think one of the reasons your books, your articles, The Fix is so important, because there are a lot of people out there that don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, that means a lot when I get those emails. But I would actually say that, New York, because I was living there for 3 years and being, obviously very sober, that is not a great place to be sober. And people are not on, there's so much shame.
Yes, I got sober in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and I spent the first 5.5 years of my sobriety in New York. And I had to do it because that's where I'm from. You're from L.A.?
I'm from Marin County, San Francisco.
San Francisco. So and I think it's important. It was important for me to get sober where to face the... But then that was it.
I don't think I would have gotten sober if I had to do it in New York.
It's funny. I say that about L.A. all the time. My insecurities were so low that, in Hollywood and Los Angeles, I don't know if I could have sat through the meetings, with all these beautiful people looking like the way I did. I had no clothing, nothing. And I was even when I came out here at 5.5 years sober, I was intimidated by meetings in LA.
But the nicest people you'll ever meet.
I had to get used to them. I saw people with tattoos around their certain, she talking about, no, I'm joking around. I'm joking, tattoos all around, talking about shooting in places I'd never heard of on bodies.
Right.
And I came out here and I was like, what do you guys, I was like, where am I?
I have to apologize for him right now.
And I've
never heard it before.
No, and I'd go to certain meetings and certain Friday night meetings and you'd see all these beautiful people and I'd be like, oh my God. And something that I often share when I'm sharing at a meeting is like, I share like, when you're newly sober, I think one of the hardest things, I'm sure you could identify with this, is we're all insecure. I was at least.
Except me.
Except you. You just had it all together.
Yeah.
And
born that way.
And yes. And no, but I think that's an important thing. So I guess wherever you are.
Well, there's cultural differences, right? I mean, the East Coast is more like, more Calvinistic, blame-centered. It's the person's fault, and there's still that.
There wasn't as much solution.
It's not.
That's definitely
it's more
the
like
truth.
you got to fix yourself and pull yourself up. LA, let's face it, it's about narcissism. It's about self, and everybody in the room thinks that everybody's looking at them. It's like.
That's such a negative spin on it, though.
It's kind of true, though. I mean, don't you think?
No,
you don't think New York is much more traditional and LA is much more sort of about the self and the I?
If it is, I think it's healthier and better.
Yeah. I wasn't making judgment one or the other. I was just saying that they're different.
You're like, it's narcissistic and that's wonderful. No, but I mean, what I think is I think New York, in so many ways, is so much more conservative. And this is nothing against
no.
But it's all making a lot of sense suddenly. But and so, for instance, I had, an anniversary dinner or whatever, birthday dinner, what you call it here. And people I knew from program in New York would say, oh, you have non-program people coming. Can you not tell them I'm sober?
Right.
Huh? There was so much shame around it. Right. And I think the best places to get sober are the best places to bottom out. And I think lots of people come to LA subconsciously to bottom out.
Well, you're either running from something or you're running to something.
Yeah.
You don't end up in Hollywood because you're in a winning streak. Most people that end up here
or because you're really well adjusted
right.
and so centered.
Yeah, and you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're in the studio tonight with the amazingly talented author for her new book, Falling From You, which came out October 11th.
Yeah.
And where can you could find that on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. I mean, it's wherever books are sold. So it's at Barnes & Noble. There are fewer and fewer bookstores these days. But it's actually online, too, at Target and Walmart.
Is it on Kindle?
Yes, of course.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. Download it today.
But what's cool? I think all the things we're talking about are so important because it's something Andrew and I have spoken about a lot, that these are things that people need to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's like you were talking about in your book about being 10 years sober and hitting that wall. I think so many of these issues need to be spoken about that haven't been, whether it's medications, whether it's what do I do when I'm 10 years sober. And finally, there's a dialogue, which I think is amazing about the fix, is that you're creating a dialogue. Right. And, not just for people that are sober.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I am. I think I've been lucky enough to be in meetings where people are really honest about some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly not this like, oh, at 5 years suddenly it just all starts getting so easy.
Right. But I thought that you're right.
Nothing worth having is easy.
Which I think that's the great alcoholic. Even when you're sober, you think it's going to be easy.
Right.
And a friend of mine said to me one time, I go, because I was like, I'm not having fun. He goes, well, before you got sober, did you have fun? He goes, what is it in you that thinks every day should be fun?
Right. or that happiness, constant happiness is somehow our right. Yeah. It's like, who said that? Yeah.
Or even,
So we have a segment on this show that we're going to do. We have a segment about, the top 10, and I hope you could think of a few of.
And now it's time for the top 12 reasons to get clean.
Anna, do you have any top 12 reasons of why a person would get clean? They could be funny or sad, whatever you'd like.
Well, as one of my friends says, AA is God's beauty parlor. We get more attractive. We do.
We haven't heard that one before. That's good.
Oh, it's true.
I agree.
I looked horrible before. And I'm not saying anything now, but I'm just saying it's a massive improvement when you start taking care of yourself. Andrew
used to be 600 pounds.
I did. I was 600 pounds.
That's impossible.
No, I'm just,
It was close.
yeah.
590.
I think it works reverse for men and women. I think men
think
start
so?
getting older when they get sober. Women start getting younger.
Yeah, well, I think drug addicts,
Yeah.
it freezes you,
Right.
at the age you start doing it.
Yeah, you get developmentally arrested.
Yeah, but physically too, I think.
Right. In terms of fashion.
No, literally, I think like you look at alcoholics who come in and they look like just straight up alcoholics. They look,
Right.
no offense, you don't like very like their skin's all whatever. But addicts come in and they all look like baby faced.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
don't
the
know.
Gin Blossoms, the red noses.
The band?
No, yeah. But most people don't know this. The red thing, when like Ted Kennedy had the red nose.
Yeah.
That's a gin
W.C.
blossom.
Field.
I've never heard
That's
that.
a gin blossom.
called
That's
a
because
gin
from
blossom.
drinking too much, your
Yeah.
nose gets red.
Yeah. Not a great look.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, another reason to get sober.
Reason number 11, yes.
Reason number 11 would be to have a life you can be proud of
That would be
and
good.
remember.
I like the remember part.
The remembering helps.
Yes.
Andrew, you got any?
No.
You're.
I'm blank today.
Okay, so I'm going to share my quick story because it's Halloween. I got
Okay.
sober in Brooklyn, and one of the people there, his name was Tutu Mike. And he was this like real thuggy
Not
looking.
Tutu Mike, really?
Yes,
Wanna hear
this
story?
real tough looking Italian guy. But he was.
By the way, I just got to tell you, Anna, this story failed miserably
Miserably
earlier.
outside.
So we're giving him a second
Yes.
chance to make
That's
this
generous
funny.
of you. 'Cause
Yes.
so far, I might have liked
Right?
two.
Like,
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
right.
on.
Anyways, I looked up to this guy because he had been sharing one time at a meeting that, he's just really tough and he was always so proud of one of his sons. And this is one of my favorite things about sobriety. He used to go to all his son's hockey games, but he had one son that wanted to be an actor. And I remember him sharing this story about him going to his son's play, and he had this huge smile on his face. And the reason they found out they called him Tutu Mike, his last night out was on Halloween, and he got locked out of his house, of like wherever he was, in a tutu, and he had to go all around Brooklyn in a tutu. The story failed again.
That's not true. Just
Yeah.
because we're not laughing out loud
Yes.
does not mean A, we're
No.
not laughing, or B, we're not
No, I'm-
affected.
I'm
you're
laughing, but for a different
You're
reason.
not laughing. Anyways, that's my, you wake up, you walk outside your house in a tutu. That's definitely a good reason to get sober.
I think you should have worn a tutu to the show in honor of Tutu.
In order of Tutu Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way it would have brought more to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Next time.
Next
Next Halloween.
time. Next Halloween, which is just coming
Are
up.
you dressing up, Anna?
No. I'm not into it.
I don't get it.
It's just not my thing.
I don't get it.
No, I don't like it either.
I don't get
stay
it.
home every Halloween.
There's
I
two
just-
types of personality. I mean, there's the
Yeah.
people, and I look at them on Facebook, because obviously everybody puts every picture of them themselves.
yeah.
And I'm like thinking to myself, is there something wrong with me?
No, I go through that every Halloween.
And I start to question my
Yeah.
own sanity of what am I? Am I missing the boat?
I don't really even think I was that into it as a kid.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I don't
I
like
wore a
when you
yarmulke.
dress
That
up
was
so you
my
can't
costume.
recognize anyone, and then like you're supposed to like wander around and run into people. But how do you find them? 'Cause
I was
they're-
always into the candy.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, of course, because you're an addict, right? You just as
I
much candy as
love me
possible.
some chocolate, but
Right?
like, yeah, just I'm finally sober enough to admit out loud that I don't
Just
like
don't like
Halloween.
I agree, and it's like I don't feel like I'm a party pooper. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I'm almost horrified by the costumes too. I got to be honest. Like if you're 40 and
That's
you're
the
dressing
thing.
like a chambermaid that you think is sexy,
Right.
that would be
right.
reason number 9 to get sober. Okay, if you think you look sexy as a chambermaid and you're a little pleasantly plump, it's time to stop drinking.
All right, I'll give you number 8.
Okay.
You think your cat's a therapist?
Okay.
How about number 7? You think your cat's talking to you?
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about number 6? You bathe at the airport, which I
Wow.
found a lot of people doing this morning.
But that could just be a traveler.
No.
Oh,
There's
have you
two.
ever been in those business class lounges?
With the showers.
I'd love to bathe there every day.
Well, you see, right, there's 2 different bathrooms in the airport. There's the one before you get in the gate, and there's the one
There's business
after.
class lounges that have like
Okay, you're rich people, okay? You own a rehab, you're a famous author. I'm a poor schmuck, okay?
Blue business class, I might
I got
add.
upgraded, okay, and I
Right.
felt very
You would
uncomfortable
just-
the
you would
whole
just get
ride. that I was
dirtier
gonna
in the
be-
bathroom
I
in the
felt I was
airport.
going to be found out the whole ride. They'd be like, "You're just an advantage mile. You just got bumped."
wow, you're
And-
so full of like judgment and
No, I'm full of
lack of self-esteem.
self-love.
You just got
They
Um,
all got, but all those people in business class, they all got upgraded.
right.
Yeah.
I'm convinced of it.
yeah.
That's the only way I go.
Yeah. So what number are we at? Number 6?
Down to 5.
But we're running out of time.
We are running out of time. We got 5 minutes left.
And Anna, do you have anything else to plug?
Well,
Okay,
That's the second time, by the way, you've
no,
done that.
you said it the first time.
I
You
did
said
not.
it. We had.
the plug, is that
yeah.
the funny
It's
part?
just-
No,
It's
yeah,
just
he
this
said it to
adolescent humor.
He said it to
It's Beavis and Butthead.
and he
meet Clean
disagrees
Radio.
with me because he's we had what's the comedian. I can't remember his
That's
name
great.
right now.
That's really
and
good.
who's huge who won the last
Alonzo.
comic, Alonzo Bowden, and Andrew goes to him, something to that extent. So anything else that you got?
I said,
the
is there
fix?
anything else you want to plug? And
Right.
he goes, that's for another conversation.
He's
So.
a gay man?
No.
Okay.
No. Right now.
Okay, yeah,
And
no.
we're like,
I would say, well, a reason...
now I'm going to be dead. He's like giant. Okay.
Are you listening, Alonzo?
Yeah, right? Uh-oh.
Well, I mean, if you're not sober, or, if you're trying to read Falling for Me when you're drunk, you're not going to remember how great it is. So that's a reason to
That's
get
a good-
sober.
that's a really good
and
reason.
A reason to get sober is then you could afford Falling for Me.
It's $10.
Yes.
But,
If you're drinking or you're using,
Yeah.
that's a hit of crack or buying a Falling for Me. Get sober, you could afford the book.
It's true. It's true.
How about your out-of-couch surfing options?
That's definitely true.
Right? How bored do you get sitting on that couch using?
Yeah, watching the
Right.
same movies.
Unable to move and feeling
Yeah.
sick.
I used to watch Say Anything a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
That's really bad.
that is really
Never
bad.
liked that movie.
You could always tell two types of people: Say Anything fans, not Say Anything fans.
That's right. I just had this conversation with someone. I know we're trying to close, but that movie, I never understood it.
You either had a crush on Ione or you had a crush on John Cusack.
I never had a
That's-
crush on John Cusack.
I
I
had
just never understood conceptually that movie.
I had a crush on Ione Sky.
Right. That's easier to
Yeah.
imagine.
And yeah, but then John Cusack, I totally agree. I don't have a crush on him. Give us reason number one. I think we're just going to skip.
I think it's time.
You could own a rehab. That's reason number one. I want to thank
Yeah.
Analystis. Thank you so much for coming down. Anybody out there that you go to thefix.com, buy her new book, Falling for Me. I'm going to read it. I'm sure it's amazing. And
What are your websites again?
Well, just AnnaDavid.com. You can kind of get everything there, and then thefix.com.
Great.
I'm on Twitter.
You got any TV shows coming up, or are you going to be?
No. Thanks for rubbing salt in my wounds. Nobody wants to televise me anymore. But I do tweet it all day long. So
Oh, cool.
at Anna David.
Cool.
Well, I have a whole theory on that too. I know we're running out of time, but you're actually you've gone to school. You have background in this area. We live in a day. I don't want to say certain. It used to be you're a pundit on a lot of these issues.
Right.
But sadly now the pundits have become different people that
Right.
aren't necessarily.
Right.
Have you found that? I could be totally wrong.
No, I mean,
Oh.
what bothers me more, it's the same kind of theme, is that, like people are saying, like, Snooki, reality star and author.
Right.
What?
Right.
Since when is paying somebody to write a book?
What has
for
happened
you?
in the cosmos that Snooki is an author?
Right. Well, she wrote
Yeah.
a book on
Kim
cocktails.
Kardashian is
Yeah.
an author?
You
We
know?
got to wrap it up and go.
Yes.
But it's been a wonderful evening
Yes.
with Anna David. And
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
It's
for
fun.
being here.
thank you so much for coming.
And we have big news. Come to our website this week about a new station that we're going to be on. Listen us at and find us at KLEANradio.com. You can find us at Facebook. You are listening to KFWB News Talk 980.
Thanks for listening to Clean Radio. You can tap into Clean Radio 24/7 at KleanRadio.com, featuring a live video stream of the show, the best of Clean Radio, and even watch Andrew's appearance on Dr. Drew's Life Changers. If you or someone you know is in need of addiction assistance, you can call this number right now, 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.